Hi everyone, today I'm testing out a lens that could be seriously fun. I often really enjoy testing lenses from Chinese manufacturer Venus Optics, and today I'm looking at their Laowa 9mm f2.8 lens for mirrorless cameras with APS-C sized sensors. It's a manual focus, manual aperture lens for Sony E-mount, Fuji X and Canon EOS M mirrorless mounts, and it costs around $500 US. I'd like to thank Venus Optics for sending me a sample copy of this lens for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review. On an APS-C camera, 9mm is the full frame equivalent of 13.5mm, so this is an extreme wide-angle lens, just about the widest you can get on APS-C. But it's also a rectilinear lens rather than a fisheye lens. It projects straight lines as straight lines for a natural but very dramatic effect. In fact, this lens is designed specifically to project almost no distortion at all, a very nice feature on such a wide-angle lens. It also has a bright maximum aperture of f2.8, making it suitable for shooting indoors or in darker conditions. On an APS-C camera, this is about as wide-angle and bright as a lens can get. It could be really handy for landscape photographers to add to their kit bags if you own a mirrorless camera. Well, let's look at the lens's build quality. This thing is absolutely tiny and I love it. It's made of metal and it feels nice and solid, but it's still very light. It's unusual to be able to use filters on such a wide-angle lens, but this lens does indeed accept small 49mm filters, which will be very useful for landscape photographers. Remember now, this is a fully manual lens with no electronics inside it at all. The focus ring doesn't turn amazingly smoothly, but it is quite precise and it's not sticky in any way. Manually focusing such a wide-angle lens is not a problem, especially with modern features in cameras like focus peaking or magnification. The lens's aperture ring works with clicks once every f-stop, handy for stills photographers. The lens comes with a tiny hood which will help you a little when shooting in bright conditions. Its design does slightly get in the way of any filters you're using though. All in all, I love this thing's tiny size and nice, workable build quality. It's so neatly designed. Okay, image quality. I'm testing it out on my mirrorless APS-C camera, a Sony a5100 with its 24-megapixel sensor. At f2.8, we see fantastically sharp resolution and great contrast in the middle of the image. Over in the corners, we see softness. Or do we? On further investigation, I found that this lens suffers a bit from field curvature at f2.8. The corners are in focus closer to your subject than the middle. So if we refocus, then the corners are now sharp. But if we look back in the middle, the image quality is softer. I've seen field curvature before on other lenses, and there are ways to deal with it. For example, when focusing your picture, if you make sure your corners are in focus first, then quite often the middle will be in focus if you move the focus forward a little. And sometimes, just sometimes, it can even be useful. For example, in this picture, the subject in the corners is much closer to the camera anyway, so it all works out. It's still a bit of a black mark though, as the ideal is definitely to have a flat plane of focus. Anyway though, the good news is that this is only really an issue at f2.8. If you stop down the lens's aperture to f4, then we can see really excellent sharpness in the middle and quite good sharpness in the corners, with almost no visible chromatic aberration. Stop down to f5.6 for almost perfect image quality in the corners, and the lens remains as sharp even stop down to f11. So, apart from the field curvature at f2.8, the picture quality of this lens is really excellent, very capable. Its images are clean and sharp even on a 24-megapixel camera. Let's see now about distortion and vignetting. For an extreme wide-angle lens, the distortion is corrected fantastically well. There's essentially no distortion, which is great to see. At f2.8, vignetting is heavy though. The corners look very dark. They're a bit better at f4, a little better again at f5.6 and f8, But really, vignetting never really goes away. If you want a lens this small with such a wide angle, there'll always be a price to pay. This lens can focus as closely as 12 centimeters to your subject. That's great for such a wide angle lens, giving you some really dramatic images of smaller subjects. The also good news is that close-up image quality remains brilliantly sharp, even at f2.8. This lens could be a really nice option for astrophotography. I've had a lot of trouble getting good shooting conditions at night time recently, but when I had time to get out there, I haven't really noticed any chroma smearing in my images, even with the lens's aperture at f2.8, so that's another good feature. Let's see how this lens works against bright light. At a wide angle of 9mm, you'll be getting the sun in your picture quite often. The lens's resistance to bright light is not its strongest feature though, and you'll be seeing some considerable flaring. Finally, bokeh. At f2.8, you can get slightly out of focus backgrounds if you're close to your subject. For such a wide-angle lens, the quality of its bokeh is reasonably smooth. Your backgrounds will not look distracting. So, how can we sum up this little lens? Well, honestly, it ticks a very large number of boxes for me. It's extremely wide angle, it has a bright maximum aperture, it can focus quite closely to your subject. It's tiny, it has nice build quality, you can use filters with it despite its extremely wide angle, it has low chroma levels, it has almost no distortion, and it's not too expensive. Few lenses are perfect though, and it does have one or two flaws. Its work against bright light is not great. There always seems to be a little vignetting for you to deal with, and the lens's field curvature can be a little fiddly to work around if you're shooting at f2.8. But if you do work around it, then you can quite easily be rewarded with excellently sharp images from this lens, with low chromatic aberration from corner to corner, even at wider apertures, with nice colours and good contrast. I like the Laowa 9mm f2.8 very much, and I think for landscape photographers it could be a dream come true. You could go hiking around mountains with this thing in your camera bag, and it's so small and light that you'd never even know it was there, and it'll get great pictures for you. If you own a mirrorless APS-C camera, then I can pretty much highly recommend this little Venus Optics lens.